road fans, it is Rock Face painting day. I'm going to get started in earnest on this thing today. What I have in front of me are most of what I think should be the supplies I need. I've got my scenic cement, half and half mixture, water and Elmer's glue. I've got a big bottle of burnt umber, and I've got some smaller bottles. I've got granite gray, dark granite, burnt sienna, and a yellow, daffodil yellow, English ivy green, and black. And I also have my blender and a box full of dirt, leaves, and sticks that I collected out of the backyard. And I have a little pile of dirt right there. And I'll tell you now how everything's going to get used. My rock face, sort of the base color of the rocks, is going to be the granite colors, but they're going to be stained with these dirt colors as well. So the reason I have this pile of dirt here, this is the dirt that I'm using out of my backyard for the entire area of the layout. So what I want to do first is I want to mix up using the colors that I've got, and I may have to throw in some others if I can't get the right color, but I'm going to try to mix up a batch of paint the color of this dirt. And what I will do then is I will paint the rest of the hill with that color just to give it a good base coat. And then I'll water it down. I'll water it down considerably so that it's just a very light wash. And that will probably be the last thing, or one of the last things that I will do to the rocks. After I get them colored in their granite colors, maybe a little bit of that yellow, and once I get them colored the way that I want them, I'm going to wash and let the dirt color run down the cracks and crevices as if the dirt has run down the face of the rocks and stained it. And that hopefully, in my mind, will tie all of these colors together. No matter what color the rocks turn out, this dirt wash will make it a believable scene as we believe that the dirt has washed down the rock face. And also in that little stream that I've got, I'll be using a lot of this color because obviously the stream is not an active stream. It's going to be a little muddy place, and so it's going to have a lot of this dirt color in it. Once I get the rock faces done, then I will load up my blend, not load it up, but I'll put a few scoops of leaves and little twigs that I've got in this blender and pulverize that down to an acceptable level. And I will sprinkle it across the entire top of the little hill over here. And that will be my forest floor to start with. And then I'll start adding the underbrush and greenery and trees, and eventually build my way up to the final placement of the trees. So that's the plan. That's the plan for the day. And I'll take you over here and show you where we stand. This is my little area where the water has run down and cascaded into this little pool, runs under the little trestle bridge and out through this. And again, as I mentioned in the last video, it has a lot of chipped up debris down inside the creek, and it's a little darker now than last time you saw it. I went over it with a very light wash, and not really on purpose, but what I did was I wet my brush and was smoothing out these little cracks and crevices in between the rocks so that they will not look like so much separate pieces once the washes get on there. And I just, as I often do, I just used liquid that I had, some dirty water that I had, knowing that I wanted some coloration just to begin starting on this. And you can see I've already got just a little bit of a dark coloration in my rocks, so they're no longer that plaster color that they were on the last video. I'll take you over here and show you this little wall as well. And this is my seam. This is where the two pieces join, and it goes up through those rocks right there and up across there. You can't see it because it's temporarily covered, but when I get ready to, once I get this done, I'll take my X-Acto blade, and all I've got to do is slice through that cheesecloth and all the way down there, and then I have a perfectly joined scenery section. But I'm going to scenic it completely at the top before I do that, so that it doesn't look like two oddly placed elements. and then that follows on around. I also have to blend in this dirt road color. The dirt road on my backdrop is a little lighter than the dirt that I have in my backyard. So I may have to, in this little dirt road area, just sort of think that it's been tread on a lot. It's got a little sand mixture in it, and maybe they threw down some sand or something to lighten it up. So this area where the road comes into this area is gonna start out that lighter color. And I won't do that with the different colored dirt. I'm not gonna go find the correct dirt. I will actually lay my dirt down, and then I'll just take some powders or washes or something and lighten it up just a little bit as it goes back into that road. You'll see this is the color of my dirt, and I think it's if you can see, I'll zoom in, that darker part of the road there is pretty darn close. I don't know how well this is going to come across, but it's pretty darn close to the colored dirt that I'm using. So I think it's going to blend in just nicely. So I'm going to set up camera, and I'm just going to talk through what I'm doing and let you see this in real time. There's so many people out there who do videos on how to do this weathering and coloration of rock formations, and to be honest, I've been watching them, so I'm not coming up with anything new here. I'm just trying to use some other suggested techniques, and everybody that you watch will tell you something different. I'm going to start, some people start by doing their darkest color first so that it gets into the cracks and crevices, and then you lighten up as you go. I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to start with the lighter colors, and I'm going to move to the darker colors. My darkest color then being that brown wash that I'll use at the end. So we'll see how this goes. It's just paint. If it doesn't work out, I can always redo it, but I'm just having fun experimenting with it right now. There really is no right or wrong way to do it, as long as it looks like you like it at the end. So let me get the camera set up, get my paints over here, and get them mixed up, and I'll be right back. And no, this is not lunch. I know it looks like mustard, ketchup, and mayonnaise on a burger patty or something. That's the colors that I use to mix this up. So I'm going to stir those together, and it will become like that. I'm going to make up one big batch of this. Just thought I'd show you the colors that are going into that. All right, so I got the top parts of the hillside, and the rest of the layout actually painted with this dirt brown color that I've come up with. And now I'm going to use a very diluted dark gray paint, and I'm going to paint my rocks, and I'm going to just be very loose and sloppy with it. Some areas are going to be a little darker than others. I'm not going to worry about getting it up on the earth painted part. I'm just going to let it run down in the cracks the way it wants to. This is going to set the tone for the color of the rocks overall. Then I'm going to come back with the lighter colors, and I'm going to just accent some areas that need to be lighter. And then I'll work my way toward the darker colors and accent the areas that need to be in shadows or cracks or crevices, and nothing neat and organized about this. As I said before, there is no right or wrong way to do any of this. It's just whatever you like. And this is going to be the most solid of my colors. The other ones were going to be the later colors that I'm going to come back with next are going to be a little more diluted than this. But to me, all of these rocks come from the same place, the same geology, the same history. So I'm not going to have red rocks and yellow rocks and gray rocks and black rocks and so forth and so on. I think all the DNA of all the rocks that make up this little hillside here is going to be this granite gray. And then I'm going to come back in and I'll give the rocks their character. And we're going to do it wet on wet. I'm not going to let any of these colors dry. At least ideally so. I'm sure It'll take me a little while, and some of it will probably dry. But I'll come in with a wet brush and wet it down, because these next colors I do want to be mixing with water and running down in a natural sort of way. This is not so much that right now. This is just coating it all. I want to be able to see the plaster through it, and I don't want to cover up the plaster. I mean, I don't want to cover it up with this gray completely. Just want to give it that little tone of gray, granite gray. Basically, so there's no white spots. I'll come back with white, by the way. I didn't put that color out a while ago when I was showing you the colors that I'll be using. I will be using white at the very end. I'll come back with a dry brush technique, and we'll highlight the highlighted areas with white. That's a whole different technique than this wet washing. It's already starting to make the rock formations pop a little bit, so you can start seeing the jagged edges and what their shapes actually are. I'm going to muddy the stream up a lot. I want to get this good wash of gray on all the rocks. They do start up to be rocks that are gray, but they do get muddied up in a hurry. And again, this is the thickest of all the mixtures that I'll be using. I've watched people who paint a very dark, I think, and I mentioned before, a very dark background like this, with even so far as painting it black. I'm going to steer away from that, and I still want the highlights to shine through. And I did not wet the rocks before doing this step. I will wet the rocks before doing the other steps, because this step is the closest to painting of any of what I'm about to do. I didn't wet the rocks, and this is going on like a very thin paint. But you can still see that it's highlighting some areas more than others, and it's still pooling in some cracks and crevices. You also don't want to, especially in these areas that just have the drywall mud, you don't want to spend too much time with a wet brush on that, because you can wet that and rub it just enough that you can start rubbing the texture off of it, and I don't want that to happen. I want it to keep its texture. And that's pretty simple. That's all there was to it for the first step. And I like it. Okay, so that is done. Next thing I'll do is come back in with this lighter gray and just touch some areas that I want it to run down while it's still wet with the other gray on it. Sort of this lighter gray will be up toward the top of the rocks. More exposed to the wind and the sun, and not quite so dark and black as some of the other areas will be. I really didn't want to get it on the trestle there. I should have covered that up. Just highlighting the tops of all the rocks just a little bit. Also, artistically, that will look like sun is hitting it at the top, and the bottoms are going to be more shaded. Just let it run. If it wants to run, that's what we want it to do. Notice I'm just doing this one section. I'm not trying to do the whole layout because I don't want to give it time to dry in between coats or in between colors. I think that's sufficient for the light gray. And now the really odd colors that I'm just going to touch some places just to start giving it a little color character. There's probably quite a lot of this in that little runoff area there. Just let it run where it wants to go. Whoops, picked up a little paint there actually. So I'm going to go wet this brush and really wash that off. It's not a big deal, but I do want to take care of it while it's wet. I don't want a big yellow splotch right there. So I just cleaned my brush in this, and I'm going to use this little brush cleaner. Very, very, very light yellow just to go back and keep everything wet. Just want to give it all a washing of this. This is not really adding any color to it. There's not enough water. Not enough color in that water to add color. But I'm just making everything a little more liquid right now. All right, I'll keep that handy. That's what I'll use to thin it down if it gets to looking a little too much. All right, let's move on to, this is the burnt sienna. Little iron in the mixture, probably running down through there, little iron deposits, making things just a little red. Now, see, I don't like that, so I'm going to go back and use that water mixture. And yeah, I like that though. I like the way that did. See, it's just all a surprise. I don't know what's any of this is going to look like initially. This is one of the more fun parts, I think, of the hobby, is learning these little techniques, learning them from people. And experimenting and trying them out. I'll see, I picked up some paint there. I'm going to have to go back, and that's just from not stirring this well enough a while ago. So I'll go back with my wet brush and really give that a good dose of water. Okay, come back with a wet brush now, and let's just sort of smooth all that away. Oh, nice. I like the color. I like that color. That's nice. It really brings out the character of those rocks right there. Matter of fact, that was an accident, but I'm going to go back and do that in some more places and make that happen. I like that. Don't want everything to look alike, so I'm not going to do it everywhere. But I will do it in a few places. See if I can pick up a little bit more of that pigment. Yeah, there we go. Put it on just a little darker. Woodland Scenics, I think this is a technique that they have come up with called leopard spotting. You just take a little more serious bit of tint on your brush and leopard spot. And they advocate leopard spotting several colors before you start blending them together. So let's start putting a little yellow in that. Give it a few little yellow dabs here and there. All right, now I go back with my totally wet brush and just not bearing down too hard. Again, I don't want to mess with that plaster any more than I have to. Don't want to smooth it off for sure. I want all these cracks and crevices to remain. I've done this before with my previous layout, but it was years ago. So you wait that long in between things, it's just like starting over again. I couldn't tell you what colors I used or what techniques I used when I did it before, so I'm just making it up as I go. Not actually making it up. I can't take credit for it. I've watched and tried to learn from people. But I'm hopefully putting some of their techniques to use. In a good way. There. Now, let's come in with, this is not my dirt color, this is actually burnt umber. I'm gonna take it and put it in a lot of places where the earth meets the rock, because it is an earthy color. Sort of tie these rocks into the ground a little bit. I'm also going to use this in the shadowy places. And get it in all those little cracks and crevices where the shadows would be. All right, and before it dries too much, I'm going to go back with my, remember this is yellow, but it's not really yellow. That's just where I've been washing my brush. So this is mostly water. I like the way that those places where I had the burnt sienna. I think that I'm going to go back and do a little bit more of that. I like the way that leads it to look like iron deposits have dripped through the cracks and down the rock faces. So let's do a little bit more of that. Again, we're just making this up. As far as the color combinations go, we're just making it up. What looks good to me might not look good to anybody else, but it's my railroad, and if I like it, I'm keeping it. Again, I'm doing this leopard spotting technique, putting it on a little more full strength and then going back and wiping it off. All right, let's grab my water again. Go back and let it thin this out. Oh yeah, that's nice. I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite color to really add pop to this formation, is that burnt sienna. See, if I don't like where it is right there, I didn't like that, I just rub just a little harder, it comes off. This is just all acrylic paint. It's all water based. I'm liking it so far. Let's go back with this burnt umber now and do a few dark places. Really focus on the cracks and crevices right now with this, and let it pool a little bit in those darker places. All right. And once again, back to my water. You can always go back and make it darker, but it's hard to go back and make it lighter. So if you're not sure how to mix your mixture of paint to water, start on the thin side. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't, you can always go back and darken it up. So I'm just layering on this darkness. And when I get this totally where I like it, I will let it dry a little bit before I go back with the final thing, which is to go over it with a wash of black. But I'm not going to work that wash as much. I'm sort of going to wash the whole thing like I did initially with that gray at the beginning. because you want the black to actually follow the contours of the cracks and get in the crevices, and that's what gives you all the definition that you need in those cracks and crevices for your rocks. All right. And I did say that I'm going to use my dirt mixture now and let it run. It's going to really need to run down where the stream would go, because this is representing the mud. This is the color that the mud would be in this area. See it running down there? That's the way I want it. I want to leave it. And then these rocks down at the bottom are going to be pretty mud covered. So I'm going to go along the very top of the ridge and let the water do its thing. If mud was actually running off of this hillside, I want it to be taking the paths right now that it would be taking. Now I have one. I'm liking that. I'm gonna. I think between what it looks like now and doing the dark wash and the highlights, it's where I want it to be. Now I have ivy green, and that's just going to represent. Oh yeah, I like that. That's going to represent the moss. Other such green things that would be growing in a spring-fed creek like this. I like that a lot, especially a lot of it down here. That made it pop. I really like that. I'm going to do it at the bottom of most of the rocks all the way around, because there would be a lot of water pooling down there. In the wet season. That's nice. All right, I think I'm going to let that sit for a while, let it dry a little bit, then come back with a very thin black wash over the whole thing. And if that doesn't make the cracks and crevices pop the way I want it to, I've got some panel line paint that I will use and drop some drops down the cracks and let it run down. But I'll give you a little close up here of what we got going. There's that lovely green tint down there toward the bottom. I can just see exactly what that looks like in nature. I love it. Then going up the little waterfall area to the back. All right, so it's dried a little bit. Let's throw some black on it. Just going to cover everything sort of equally with the black. And that's going to tie everything together color-wise. It's going to make it all a little darker. That's okay. That's what I want. What's going to happen is the black is going to pool and be less transparent where it pools, and it will dry semi-transparent. It's not going to be as dark when it dries as it looks now. I'm not trying to smooth it out. I'm just trying to evenly coat everything. So I'm dabbing. I'm not stroking it. Weathering is not for the faint of heart. I think probably the better you are as an artist, the harder it is for you to weather. I'm not an artist. This looks awfully dark in my camera, but it's not in actuality quite as dark as it looks. And I'm going to come back in and do that highlighting in just a minute, and that's really going to make all this pop out. But you see, you can still see the green slime that I put in there. You can still see the little bit of iron ore that's deposited here and there. So the black didn't cover all that up. And you see it's beginning to trickle down and run into those cracks. All right, I'm going to let that set for about 30 minutes, and I'll be back and show you what it looks like, and then we'll start the highlighting. Okay, I'm going to get a real close-up here of what I'm doing. Just have titanium white paint, and I'm wiping it off, and just going to stroke downward and touch these rock faces. And all I want to do is just get a little of the white paint on the parts that are sticking up a little higher. And give the illusion of maybe the sun reflecting off of it a little bit. Just really making those little high points. The black made the crevices pop. This makes the high points pop. And between the two, it really changes the look of the layout. You don't want to see brush strokes. You don't want to see white paint. You really don't want to see white paint. You just want to stand back. And it will dry a little darker than the way it goes on. But again, just like the washes, it's easier to go back and add highlights than it is to take them away. But I think that looks pretty nice. So I'll back up now. You can see the difference in this rock and this rock, since one's highlighted and the other's not. Let me highlight this one now and show you what a difference it'll make. You don't want to go back and work it too much. There we go, just barely touching it like that. That's what we want. Really get those edges like that, make them pop out. That's a good looking rock formation. You want to make sure that it really looks good to the eye and to the camera. There we go. It's as simple as that. I don't know how well that translates on this video, but it's really making a difference in real life. Let me get this little formation down here where the camera can still see. I may have dragged a little bit too much paint on that. And you'll sort of be surprised. You'll come back and look at it later and you'll think you might have highlighted it enough, or maybe even you think you did it too much. But I have found that I come back after the paint dries and it's not usually highlighted nearly as much as I thought it was. It just sort of all starts to blend in when it dries. Okay, I'm not going to show much more of that. I'll show you the finished product in just a minute. I like the way the dirt road is already starting to pop a little bit. I haven't even painted anything yet, but I can see that I'm going to be able to do that to make it look really convincingly 3D. I'm just going to pan real slowly all the way around this little hillside where the rocks are. Remember, this is just, in some ways, this is just the first step. I love that green down there at the bottom. This is just the first step because all these rocks now will get vines and moss and all sorts of growing things coming through the cracks. And let me focus that a little better. There we go. So a lot of these cracks that might look artificial, and especially right here at this waterfall, when I had to use so many little pieces, it doesn't quite look real to me. But I'm going to fill that in with some moss, a lot of moss and greenery and such. Maybe even some little trees trying to hang on for dear life coming out of the cracks. And all that will begin to take on an entirely different shape and structure after that. See the green? I love what the green did. And that's just, I know they make products for slime and grime and that kind of thing, but that's just ivy green acrylic paint that you get at Walmart for $1.50, mixed with some water. I think the highlights on that rock were really nice. I can see somebody standing up on that little rock doing some mischief. It's not, I wouldn't want to dive. Maybe they fish, I don't know. And then coming back toward the little pool where I will add some, either, I don't know if it's going to be muddy water or mossy water, but there'll be a little bit of water down there and some cattails and other type things that are growing in the water. Here's the trestle. And coming across under there to the creek. See the mud on the rocks. Turned out really nice. And that's it. An overview of the whole layout now. From any angle I shoot, I'm not shooting anything white. That's nice for the first time. Lots of things still under construction over here. You may have noticed my little porter was turned over sideways. It didn't crash that way. I'm just working on the coupler on the back of it. And I don't yet have a cradle for it, so I'm probably not treating it as well as I should, but There's a view of all the new brown stuff and the little rock formation on the side of the hill back there behind where Earl's Oil will go back. So it's been a fun day. It didn't take that long. It took me, overnight, a couple of nights molding rocks and bringing them up here and seeing what fit and what I needed to do next. And so it's been about a 3-day process of the rocks and the molds and so forth. But the actual weathering of the rocks, I haven't been here but maybe an hour and a half today doing this. So it's not a long process at all. Look at this. Look at this iron deposit right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's what makes it all worth it when something like that pops out. That between I don't know what I like better, the iron deposits or the green slime, but I'm loving it all. I'm really happy with the way it all turned out. So glad you were joining me on the journey. Until next time, happy railroading.